Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing a card that features a fun fold element, and this card can be created with shape dies that you may have already on hand. I am using some products from Pretty Pink Posh to create this today, but I think this technique can be applied to a variety of different products. So I'll be using the Notched Squares die set along with the Hummingbird Floral set, the Friends Greeting Stamps and Dies, and finally the Scalloped Pierced Plate die. My color palette today features Mulberry, Nectar, Bellini, and Sea Glass cardstocks. This is from a variety of companies. I will have those linked in the YouTube description below, and I'm also going to bring in some Lemongrass cardstock for a pop of brightness. Now I'm starting out by cutting 1/8 inch strips from each of these colors of cardstocks, and I'm going to use the second largest notched square die to create kind of a guide for me here as I place these strips at an angle on the Sea Glass cardstock. So I'm just kind of arranging them, figuring out the angle that I want, and once I have everything figured out, I am going to start adhering these to the Sea Glass cardstock. Now I am creating a very thin stripe detail on the frame that I'll be creating by combining two of these die cuts. So I want to adhere the strips first so that when I die cut the frame, the strips are already in place and they will also have that beautiful stitch detail that's included in the die set. So I started out with the Mulberry cardstock. That is from Spellbinders, and then I went to Lemongrass, which is from Concord and 9th. Then I'll add my Nectar strip and finally my Bellini strip. As I add each of these to the cardstock, I'm making sure that I butt them up against the previous strip so that there's no gaps. And I'm adding just a thin line of liquid glue to the back side of each of these strips, but you could add it directly to your panel right underneath that previous strip if you prefer to do it that way. Now to create my frame, I am taking the second largest and the third largest die and I'm nestling them together on my work surface, and I'm going to hold them together using some Best Ever Craft Tape from Spellbinders. And I'm going to leave them in this configuration as I cut not only this colored cardstock, but I'm going to cut a few layers of the frame to kind of build up some dimension. So I'm just kind of checking to make sure that I have the angle right, that there's kind of equal spacing between the stripes and the corners of those squares. And then I'm adhering the die in place using some more of that Best Ever Craft Tape. And I'm going to add my metal shim to my die cutting sandwich and cut into the clear plastic cutting pad for my sandwich because I want to make sure that I get through all of those layers of cardstock. So I checked the back side before I removed my dies to make sure I had gotten through all the layers and it cut beautifully. And then I can remove my frame. Now I'm going to set that inner piece aside. You could use that for another card project. I actually ended up trimming it down and placing it in the center of my arrangement here in just a bit, but you could do a 2-for-1 instead if you prefer. Now I'm taking that same configuration of dies and I'm die cutting some heavyweight cardstock, about 4 or 5 layers, to build up that frame. Once I have all of my frames cut, I'm going to remove the inner die and cut just this larger die out of some solid white cardstock for the backer of my fun fold, and then I'll cut it again. So 2 of the solid pieces, several frames, and we're going to end up stacking this up. Now, because I die cut all of these frames with the 2 dies taped in place, all of them are the exact same size. If I had tried to nestle and re-nestle these into each other again, I probably would have ended up with some gaps and some frames that don't perfectly line up. But I made sure that I die cut all of the frames that I needed before I kind of separated those 2 dies. Now I'm adding liquid glue to the front side of these white die cut layers and I'm stacking them all together. And as I stack up the layers, I'm just kind of using my fingers to make sure that all of the layers line up properly, just pushing them into place, which is why I really love a liquid glue for an application like this, because you have a little bit of wiggle room to get this lined up just perfectly. I'll finish off by adding that 4th frame underneath, and then I have just a bit of dimension for my frame on my fun fold design. Once my frames are stacked up, I'm going to take this entire stack, I'm going to add some liquid glue behind that, and I'm going to adhere it to the top portion of my fun fold design. Now, in order to adhere this front piece to the back piece, I actually need to create a tab. And so I'm trimming a piece of cardstock to 1 inch by 2.5 inches. I just measured the top of that notch square to make sure that it would fit within that. And then I'm going to score this long ways at the 1/2 inch mark. So this will create a folded tab. Now this folded tab is what I'm going to use to adhere the front side of this fun fold design to the back side. It's kind of like a card on a card, but you can't use the normal method of scoring the top of one of those shapes. And I'll show you why here in just a bit after I assemble this. So I'm laying this flat and I'm adding a piece of double-sided tape to each side of that score line. And then I will remove the backer on one side. So now I have this tab. I'm adding the fold with it towards the top on the back side of my little stacked up piece here. So you can see I have that tab adhered to the top portion. Now I'm going to remove the backer on the other side of the tab and I'm going to adhere my solid white die cut piece, just nestling those together. And this is going to allow this to open. Now this is something that you can do with other shape dies like circles or squares or rectangles, and you can add these to the front of the card. Now you can see that my tab is kind of visible there on the inside, so I'm just going to take one of the pieces that fell out of the center of those stacked up white die cuts for the frame, and I'm going to add it into the center part of this opening design with some tape runner adhesive, and that just helps disguise the tab that's holding the two pieces together. So normally when I would make something like this, like a shaped card, I would take two pieces and I would score one along the top about a 1/2 inch in, just like this, and I would adhere them using the top portion of that tab. So I'll show you here. I'm just going to fold over on that score line, add some adhesive above the score line, and adhere these two together. Now this works if you want to create a shaped card. However, if you want this shaped card to be on top of a panel, let me show you what happens when you adhere this down to your card. You need some room for that to hinge back, and this card base does not allow for that opening to kind of hinge open. So while this works great for a shaped card design, it doesn't work in this instance. And that's why I created that little tab to hold my two notch squares together. Now, if I add this piece with the tab in the center, it opens freely. I don't have that kind of score line getting in the way, or it doesn't require the room to kind of hinge open. So that's why this works. Now, here's where I decided to die cut the center of this notch square here that has the stripes on it with an even smaller die and kind of nestle that within the framed shapes. I'm going to decorate this using some sentiments and some imagery from that Floral Hummingbird or Hummingbird Floral stamp set from Pretty Pink Posh. You've probably seen me use this in a card here on my YouTube channel already. I absolutely love the imagery in this Hummingbird Floral stamp set. I'm inking up those two floral pieces with some Altenew Obsidian black pigment ink. It is a deep, rich, beautiful black ink. And you can see I stamped the You're an Amazing Friend in some sea glass ink and die cut that using the coordinating die. Now, I don't end up actually using that sentiment because it was a little bit large. It was taking up too much space. And when I figured that out, I went ahead and stamped this Hello Friends sentiment instead. This is also from the Friends Greetings stamp set from Pretty Pink Posh, and I'm going to die cut that using the coordinating die. I used black pigment ink again for this because I felt like the blue just wasn't popping against that black and white floral image. I die cut a couple of plain white pieces for the sentiment, and I'm going to stack the sentiment on top of those. So I've added some liquid glue to the front of those plain white die cuts, and I'm adding my stamped image on the top, just making sure that everything's lined up. And I repeated that process with a single layer for my floral stems. So just a single layer of white cardstock behind that die cut using the coordinating die, some liquid glue to hold those together, and I'm just making sure everything stays secured. For the inside portion of this frame, I added that notch square with some tape runner adhesive, so it actually sits lower than the frame. And now I'm going to add my floral stem and my sentiment. Now my sentiment wasn't quite popping like I wanted it to, so I die cut a piece of the sea glass cardstock, and I'm offsetting the stacked up sentiment just slightly so there's a blue shadow layer, and adhering that right over that floral stem using some foam adhesive. To add a little texture to my card front, I die cut the scallop pierced plate from Pretty Pink Posh, and I'm adhering that to an A2 size white card base, and I actually trimmed this down to a square. So this is 4¼ by 4¼ inches, and I added my fun little fold design right on top using, you guessed it, foam adhesive. Because I love a little dimension. And I finished this off with some sparkling clear confetti from Pretty Pink Posh, just a few pieces to add a little bit of shine to catch the eye. And I'm just adding those on with an embellishment tool and some liquid glue. So that finishes off my card for today, which features this really fun fold card design. You could instead put this on a single panel instead of an opening card, but this is like a card on a card. And with that little tab design, it really allows it to open up freely on the front of the card. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there, or you can head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I'll have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. Be sure to join me over on Instagram today because this project is a part of an Instagram hop that's happening to celebrate the brand new Pretty Pink Posh May 2025 release. There's lots of inspiration and prizes to be had, and you'll find a link to my Instagram in the YouTube description below. As always, I want to say thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials, as well as my Carissa Crafts live stream broadcasts that happen right here on YouTube. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.